I need your help in researching a very secret story, and that is, did MK Ultra transfer when it was closed down, supposedly in the US in the mid 70s, to the United Kingdom? I think it probably did. I think research continued in the UK with this man. Sargent worked at St Thomas's Hospital in London and also had a Harley Street clinic where he tried drug-induced psychotherapy cures on his victims or his patients. There's many examples of people going to his clinic and being administered mind-altering drugs. But the real evidence, the smoking gun, is that Sargent was given US citizenship. He probably worked for the CIA and almost definitely was working for British security services. Why I'm fascinated by MK Ultra and its other names, because there were other names, is because of its connection to UFO, UAP. There seems to be a direct interest in the people studying or weaponizing the UAP phenomenon and their use of mind-altering, expanded human consciousness. It all started, of course, back in these death camps, where German scientists would do horrible experiments on unwilling victims. But those Germans came to the US as part of Operation Paperclip and carried on their research. And also the research they'd done in the death camps was seen somehow as scientifically valid rather than just destroyed, which I would have done. The next big use of mind control came out of the Korean War. Loyal American servicemen returned to the US after being captured by the Koreans with an altered mindset. They would disown the US and say, power to the North Koreans. It was absolutely terrifying to the US. How could a US soldier trained and had bought into the whole US system come back so altered? And that really was investigated heavily. But it's a really dodgy world of German scientists, high drug doses, insulin therapy, and a lot of the CIA work took place outside of the US, especially in Canada with this psychiatrist. But then another war happened, Vietnam. And that prompted people looking at future war strategy to think away from guns and helicopters in a jungle. Could they fight a war by staring at goats, literally? Was there a psychological distant viewing idea of winning a war but not fighting it with weapons? And that was a massive piece of research done by Stanford Research. Targ and Puthoff really were involved in distant viewing. Although their programs were nothing to do with drugs and MK Ultra, I think it's all linked because it's about altering our perception of reality. And all the time, the question of contact, of experiences, of UFOs were part of that research. But in the 1970s, in the USA, it all went horribly wrong. The Church Commission, run by this guy called Church, exposed MK Ultra and exposed how US shouldn't be experimenting using drugs on victims. Unfortunately, all the records of MK Ultra were destroyed prior to the investigation, which seems rather suspicious. One or two did turn up later that were stored in the wrong room, which is a fantastic story. But my question to you today is this: did MK Ultra or mind control or expanded consciousness and that kind of research go offshore the US and move to the UK? I have it on good authority, it might have. They wanted to continue. It was part of their store of weapons that could be used against an enemy, and it was no longer possible to do it in the US. I think this man again and a program in London and in research establishments throughout the UK, maybe at Bawdsey Manor, even near Rendlesham Forest, almost definitely at Porton Down, and at London hospitals, were still funded and involved in mind control or expanded consciousness. But I've got no real evidence of that. Did you work in that field? Do you know where these laboratories were in the UK? It's really hard to find out because it's deeply secret. But I do think the UK accepted funding from the US to carry on the research. Some of the early research was actually from the UK, so it seems a logical ally to involve in a future mind control project. And that brings me on to Rendlesham Forest. There's definite witness statements that a organization interrogated experiences, witnesses who'd seen the highly strange in the forest afterwards in a way that used mind control, drugs, hypnotism, threats, general messing around with people's perceptions. Is that true? What actually happened? Who were they? Were they British officers? Were they American officers? So because this is social media science, I'm reaching out to you to tell me what actually you know. Was there a British MK Ultra post the closure of the American project? For now, the truth still is out there.